Welcome, everybody. I'm Brian McNamee. This session is called Launch to Legacy, Navigating the Business Life Cycle of Adult Education. So thank you for coming here. And it's the first session at 8 o'clock with Kelly. But I think this is going to be a good session for our first session of the conference. I think it's going to be a good one. So, because we're going to talk about business life cycles. For those of you that are in the Zoom, thank you for joining. Holly Ann Friesa Moore, I recruited her yesterday to be my partner, and she's a good friend and colleague as well. There is a worksheet that I have here in the room for the online participants, and we'll drop it in the chat. It's really just a prompt. We'll have some reflection questions, and we will be doing a turn and talk at some point, but you just be sure to grab it. Just be sure to grab it. Okay, so here's what we're hoping to walk out of here for today. So this is not going to be a session that I'm going to tell you what you're doing wrong. I'm not going to give you a big 47-piece framework. What we're really going to do today is just kind of introduce and talk about business life cycles and help you kind of get an idea of where your program or your organization might be within the framework. So here's our 4 objectives for today. So by the end of the session, what we're hoping is that you will identify the current life cycle stage of your program using some specific signals. Connect with at least one persistent challenge to life cycle stage misalignment. So something that you might be having going on in your program or your organization, maybe you can connect with how it fits in here. For you to be able to name one decision or priority that becomes clear through the life cycle lens. And then use this lens to guide how you engage with others. That's what we're really kind of looking at today. That's going to be done. Yeah, and just one more note, I'm going to refer to program throughout the session. This is completely applicable to just organizations as a whole. So though I will be using the word program, organization also works as well. So just go ahead. By the way. All right, so my name is Brian McNamee. I run a small and growing firm called BMC Solutions Group. We are headquartered in Washington, D.C. That's where I am. But before launching the business in 2021, I was in adult education for well over 15 years, working at various DC, for those of you who don't know, has the privilege of having adult charter schools, and that's where my experience was, and actually a lot of schools that I do work with. So I come from the adult education world. I continue to work in adult education workforce. What we do real fast is we specialize in strategy, sustainability, and really everything we do is organizational change, which is part of the reason that I'm excited to talk about life cycles today. I do this because I'm just passionate about the type of work that we do. I really love being able to help support your guys' work, really helping adult education, helping those learners, and just really seeing the impact that it has on people. All right, so here's a question I want you to just sit with for a moment. So when's the last time you had a challenge in your program and it just felt like it kind of came out of nowhere? Like you were doing everything right, all your systems are on track, and then all of a sudden, maybe a key staff person leaves, a funding source falls away, just anything like that. And maybe there's a new requirement, And all of a sudden, it feels like everything is falling apart. So if that sounds familiar, I want you to know you're in good company. Um, every person in this room and on the Zoom has been probably navigating this complexity from time to time. And so what excuse me, what I say. So what I've noticed in my work is when organizations kind of get stuck like this, it's not so much that they don't have a good program, or it's not so much that they're not doing anything right, is their organizations have changed. Maybe they've grown, and what worked before is no longer working. And what that really is talks about where we're at in the business life cycle. And so what that really means is the organization's changed and how you did things before maybe isn't how you need to do things now. And as we work through the model, if you want to peek ahead, the model's on the back of the worksheet, but we'll get into it in a minute. But a lot of times what that kind of means is you're just in a different stage and you need to kind of think things through a little bit differently. So when programs. So here's kind of this little saying up here is programs struggle, but strategy doesn't match the life stage. So what might happen is there's misalignment. So misalignment where you're in the growth phase. So for instance, you may have been growing for years, right? And then really you're not growing anymore. And what you need to be kind of focused on is stabilizing where you're at. That's like a different phase. So like maybe before you were just trying to get as many people through the door, there's all hands on deck. That's no longer happening anymore. Maybe what you need to focus on is, codifying some of those systems and getting your data together. One size does not fit all. So this kind of gets a little bit to what I was talking about earlier is what maybe is a generic solution. Maybe again, what worked once before no longer applies to this specific challenge. And it's helpful to think about what stage you're in organization's development before making a decision. And knowing what stage you're in means knowing what your next best move is. And that's going to be really, as we talk about whether it's a stabilization phase, whether it's launch, or whether it's in the decline phase, really knowing where you're at is going to help you to say, this is the opportunity that I should be taking advantage of. So, really, in thinking through this, want to just kind of reframe the conversation. So rather than saying what's wrong with us, really wanted to say, where are we at, right? Does that make sense? So when you say what's wrong with us, challenges feels like failure. Kind of had that feeling before. It might create shame and blame. It might be no clear path forward, and it demoralizes your team. When you frame it as where are we, what happens is your challenges become signals. So that way you kind of have a sense of, okay, this is what's going on. It also helps normalize the shared experiences. So that's also really good to really talk about when you go out and maybe talk to colleagues or other leaders. You'll be surprised. Hopefully that's something we can even do today. Is when you normalize those shared experiences, you'll find other leaders like, okay, yes, we went through that a couple years ago, and here's what we did. When you talk about where we're at, it creates a clear lens for decision. And then it'll also empower you as leaders and empower your teams. All right, so here's what I've been talking about. So this is the organization life cycle. So by the way, I do want to just mention this is not new. I didn't create this. Maybe you've seen this before or something similar. Yes. There's a lot of adaptations out there. In fact, I was going back to see who the original one went back, and like it actually even goes back to like the 19th century. I think was the earliest reference to it. So I want to just say this: I did not create this. I did adapt it for adult education a little bit, but you've probably seen it other places. And some frameworks there might be 6 or 7 frameworks. I have it down in 5 stages here. Um, so there's 5 stages, and I'll talk about each one on the following slides. If you're just coming in, there's a worksheet kind of off to the side or up here. If you just want to grab it, that's just to kind of help with some guided conversation. So the 5 stages is there's launch. That's where you have the startup energy, high energy and uncertainty, and your goal is really to prove the concept, right? You move from launch into stabilization, and that is you're developing your repeatable systems, you're clarifying roles and responsibilities, you're reducing dependency on maybe those founders, those people that started. What you're really looking to do is create consistency. So, and I can tell you right now, I mentioned I started my firm in 2021. I am the arts organization right now. As I was preparing this, I was like, this is exactly where I'm at. Growth is a lot of times where we find ourselves. This is where you're expanding your programs and partners, increase community visibility. Your capacity a lot of times is under pressure because you got to keep growing. Your goal is to manage quality while scaling. Then you have maturity. This is where you have strong systems and outcome, you have high community credibility, you risk routing over innovation, but your goal here is to just make sure you're continuing to drive continuous improvement. And then finally, I call this where's there, but then you're in the renewal or decline stage, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But that's just you're at a critical decision point. And your thought is to either reinvent yourself or risk irrelevance. You need to have intentional strategic redesign. Your goal is to choose renewal proactively when you're in this stage. And it should be mentioned, there is no time scale as you go through these stages. It's all dependent on your organization. You can be in one of these stages for a very long time. You can move through it real quickly, or you can even sometimes you'll find yourself, okay, you're growing, but you stabilize, and maybe kind of going back and forth a couple stages. Make sense? All right, so this is just kind of in thinking about adult education. This is just some things that are kind of unique to our adult education landscape. This is not an exhaustive list, but these are a lot of times things that make us go through the life cycles, whether we like it or not. Grant cycles. So a lot of times, if you get a new grant, sometimes that makes you have to get charged up and get moving to get that grant requirement up and going. And just maybe with funding, or vice versa. If you lose that grant and you got nothing to replace it, that might make you move through a stage. Compliance requirements. That's we all know that we've all dealt with those, right? All of a sudden, you're hit with a new requirement from whoever your authorizer is, the funder, whoever. All of a sudden might be hitting you with a new requirement, and that maybe that's going to slow down growth and it speeds it up. Enrollment volatility, that is right. That's our bread and butter. That is what we're at the end of the day is to serve our adult learners. Demand fluctuations really make it things change. I know in my past experience, I don't know if it's the same for everybody else, but I know we noticed when the economy went down. When the economy took a downturn, enrollment went up. When the economy was doing really great, it was, we had to drag people through. So that was always kind of weird to see with adult ed. And of course, mission-driven culture. I mean, we're not in this business to make money. We're really in it to carry out our missions. And that really Yes. Oh, okay. Um, all right. You speaking to the Howard. Okay, all right. I'm gonna stand right here. So, all right. If whoever's having trouble, just please let me know. Just and let me know if you're still having trouble. Okay, so the first stage, this is just kind of going a little bit more into detail. The first stage is the launch phase. So this is where you have that entrepreneurial leadership. A lot of times you have one, maybe two founders, and they're the person that's really driving all your decisions, right? Um, there's informal systems. There's kind of a figure it out as we go into operations. A lot of times it's all in the person's head. That works, right? You might be working in a close knit team. You're all wearing many different hats. High energy, high uncertainty, and strong mission connection. There's a reason you're getting up every day and doing that. And what success looks like is you're proving the concept and building early credibility. So in your worksheets, I missed the first question. I apologize for that. On your worksheet, this is just want to give you guys just maybe about 60 seconds to just stop. You can write down your answers and just think through it. Is what characteristics reflect your program's early history or current reality? So, what if you've been in this environment, if you are in this environment, just think about what maybe what that's looked like. So just take a minute, about 60 seconds, and take a moment to reflect. Are they able to hear me now? Okay, great. And for those online, I'm going to drop the worksheet in the chat. But the fact of the matter is it's just a reflection question. So you don't necessarily. You got it. Thank you. All right. Um, the next stage is the stabilization phase. So this is where you're moving from launch and you're stabilizing. So here, what you're going to be doing is you're going to find yourself maybe developing repeatable programs and documented processes. Um, your early systems that function may be starting to feel fragile, or maybe those things that were all in one or two people's heads need to come out of those heads. Um, your roles are starting to be clarified. So in this stage, you're moving from everybody does everything to we need this specific role, this specific role. Um, I remember when I was at an adult education program early in my career, I was hired as the finance and operations director, and the founder came into my office one day. She needed a tutor for the help with a student. And I just looked at her and I was like, I do finance and operations and I don't tutor. And she looked at me like I had three heads. But we were in that phase, and it was after like 18 years the organization was around. But we were in that phase where it was starting to have some role clarity coming in. Um, so you're also working to move beyond dependence on one person, right? So when you're in this stage, you should start thinking like, okay, what happens if somebody wins the lottery, right? Um, and so what your success looks like is consistent delivery and organizational resilience. So again, take a minute and reflect. What systems or processes might you have in your organization or had that feel fragile or person dependent? We're doing pretty good on time. Is anybody from those first two reflections just have any thoughts that they want to share that maybe came up that they're willing to share?
It's interesting that as well as our adult education program is at my school, that we're in the second stage.
Okay. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And part of that has to do with, I think a large part of it,
Mhm.
like our program has been around and as successful as it is because of the faculty,
Mhm.
99.9%.
Mhm.
But it's interesting where we now need to bring in some other uh, nuances to the system, like fiscal responsibility,
Mhm. Mhm.
compliance issues, and not only relying on one person
Mhm. Mhm.
retire. And so it's interesting how like it's lasted as long as it has
Mhm.
ish.
Yeah.
Right. And so it doesn't matter how old your organization is, always at some point be at that stabilization stage.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to summarize and paraphrase so those online can just hear what the comment is. And thank you for that. What the participant said is that it's interesting that despite being around for a long time, she is seeing a lot of signs that they are still in the stabilization phase, kind of depending on a few people to do certain things. Is that good? Okay, thank you. All right. So the third phase is a lot of times where we think we want to be, and it is a really good, fun stage to be in, is the growth stage, right? So when you're in the growth stage, this is where you find yourself expanding services, partners, maybe geographical reach. Maybe you're opening that second site, third site. Um, you're going to have increased external visibility and reputation. So you're kind of getting known out there. And during the stage, though, you're going to see more complex organizational structures emerging, especially as if growth means bringing more people on. One thing, and I really wish I had a hard time finding this, but have you ever heard of the magic numbers? It's like and I just like never remember the exact numbers, but how you act as a group psychologically as like three people versus I think it's like 3, 12, 24, then it's like 100. Like how you can only have so much relationship with people, right? So when you're at like three people, like you're a family, right? How y'all do lunch together. When you probably do that all the way up until you get to about a dozen people. And then all of a sudden it's like, I don't know that person, you know? So then your organization's going to start looking different. And then that happens again as you get to some bigger stages of growth. If anybody knows those numbers, I've had a hard time finding this, but it is a psychological like thing that you only have so much capacity as a human to relate to people in certain ways. Um, so yeah, so what you see in this phase is more complex organization structures emerging. Scaling can outpace your system, staff, and leadership capacity. So you might need to scale a little bit quicker than what you have in your organization. And what success looks like here is managing growth without compromising quality, right? So you don't want just what you want to be doing is scaling mindfully here. So reflection question, where might expansion be outpacing capacity in your experience with organization? So, and capacity is just as a reminder, staff, systems, data, leadership. So I'll give you a minute to just sort of reflect here. Anybody have a thought they want to share? Yeah. Do you mind if I hand you the mic?
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like our scale to some extent is constrained by grant requirements. For example, we could really use another technician to be calling students all the time. That goes on the administrative cost line, and we're already pushing that boundary and asking permission and all kinds of the type of scale that we're experiencing requires something that our grants are having trouble paying us. So I guess we need to look for other funding sources.
Thank you for sharing that. That's a great example. And sometimes your growth is getting kind of stunted, right? Because you don't have those capacity. And you could be in growth for, I think, a lot of times organizations by themselves in the workplace. Can you read it for me? So that's I can't find it.
So Amanda Blau is online saying it's challenging when we have these big balloons of service needs. We have to increase staff capacity suddenly, but then we have to scale back if and when things change.
I want to say thank you, Amanda, for that comment, because that also really speaks to sometimes you can move back and forth between stages. So you got a growth and then maybe you're back into stabilizing. All right, so then all of a sudden you're in the maturity space, right? And a lot of times this might feel like, yay, we made it. And in maybe some ways you have, right? Like maybe this is, it might feel like you're at the finish line, right? But when you're in the maturity stage, this is when you have well-established programs and a proven track record. You have strong systems and clear organization and structure. You have high credibility and community presence. What you do risk here is routine overtaking innovation. And success here in this is you really want to have continuous improvement, not just stability. And I was kind of reflecting on this a little bit too, is it doesn't mean that there's not change happening. I mean, just even think just technology, right? I mean, that's going to be changing. Demographics may be changing. But for the most part, when you're in this phase, you know what you're doing. Maybe your enrollment is staying, you're not really trying to increase enrollment. You have a proven curriculum and program. Yeah, you might be making tweaks and stuff, but you know what you're doing. So take a minute here and just work on the reflection question. So where might stability or routine, though, be limiting innovation and responsiveness? Kind of just a different way to think about it. So if you're kind of in a stable program, maybe where might it be limiting your innovation? Yeah, sure.
I would say I was in this stage for a few years until this year. And with some of the funding problems with federal government hit, I think you get to a point, it's easy to be mature until there's that one monkey wrench. And in our case, the funding meant we couldn't hire new positions. We couldn't do a lot of things. And I had 4 people go out on FMLA, and it was like all at once. So we went from maturity back to the beginning here. And I think that's a challenge because that's where you get in the routine. But then if you're not ready for those, I mean, I don't think anybody could expect those kind of changes. But
yeah,
I think that you said it that like we just get so used to doing what we're doing that even thinking outside just seems like too much sometimes. Like we know what we're doing, let's just stay on this path. If we leave this path, what is it going to do? Is it going to bring us back to level 1, like where people are going to in the community think about us if we're and the reason I'm thinking about this is like for a very long time we've been known as the English language school in our state. And we have had to be doing, rebranding and redeveloping into a workforce development organization. And I think that movement, makes us a little unsure about ourselves now that we're not in this stage anymore.
Thank you for that comment. Yeah, I think we're doing great on time.
So I took over a very mature organization about 15 years ago, and one of our strengths that we always touted was the long tenure of our staff. I have people who have worked for this organization for up to 45 years. I mean, from the very inception of the organization. And I always thought that was a sign of stability and strength. But when we see these changes in under requirements, new program development requirements, that can become a liability. And those long-time stable employees suddenly don't want to budge. They kind of keep doing the same thing that they have always been doing, and they're not comfortable with changes in digital technology and new program models and what they see as what their students need. And so we are definitely moving from now. Some of those are starting to retire now. So we're moving this maturity stage to this restabilizing stage and possibly like redefining. So I'm glad to see these stages though, because when I came in here, I thought we were in the decline stage. So this is really helpful.
Well, I think you just gave me a great lead in, and I also want to say I certified in HR, and I love talking about people. And oh my gosh, if you want to grab a coffee, I can talk about that until the day is long. Okay, so then the final stage is what is called either renewal or decline. Okay, so here is what you're here. You want to be on you can find yourself, this is when you're in maturity, and then all of a sudden you're gonna be finding yourself basically in decline. So you've had these long-standing programs that have been working for a while, and all of a sudden the environment's changed for whatever reason, and it's not really working anymore. And what you may be facing is actually here's some of the signals here, the decline signals. Funder relationships are deteriorating. Maybe your enrollment is reached or declining. Staff morale and turnover is rising. Too long. What you're finding yourself being is reactive rather than strategic, right? So the important thing about this stage is to recognize when you're in it, right? Is recognize that you've got in here because it presents an opportunity. And what you want to do is you want to then think, rather than think about decline, how are we renewing ourselves, right? And what you want to do is have an intentional redesign of your strategy. Maybe you need new leadership, new partnership, reinvention that honors your mission, and be proactive response to change. And once you get this, when you're in this renewal path, right? What I want to think about is, I wasn't able to put it in the slides, just didn't organize right. Just think about like an arrow back to the other stages. And usually what you'll probably find yourself is you're going to be going back to the growth phase because you're going to be reinventing. Maybe you're starting new programs, maybe you're innovating. That's really where you're going to be back in. So then just think about, okay, now I'm back in the growth phase, is where I'm at. So it could be launch phase, could be all the way back there, but you're probably going to find yourself back in the growth phase. And I think one other thing here is if you really can't figure out what your strategy is, I mean, I hate to say it, and it's not really what I came here to say, but like maybe it is time to sunset the organization. I was once on a board of a very small organization, and it was good for like a feather in my hat of experience, but it was like we had to say we've done all that we can do. So it was an absolute organization, very local, small, in our city of DC. And we decided to sunset it, and that was a decision that we had because we carried out our mission. So, but again, the biggest takeaway here is you find yourself in decline, think about how are you going to renew. So take one more reflection here. So what signals suggest your program may be approaching an inflection point? The inflection point meaning that you might be in this stage and need to think about renewal. Yeah.
So I can see our program in a little bit of all these stages, right? There's challenges and issues in all the stages. However, I'm literally in this, our program is literally in this stage because we are forced to move physical locations in less than 2 months, and we still don't have a location yet. So I would like to be proactive, but proactive means a lot of time doing proper strategic planning. So I'm kind of wondering, how can this be incorporated all throughout the organizational change, and if there's a way to jumpstart it at this point? Because I mean, all those other signals I think are happening in adult education anyway. Our enrollment's declining, our funding is declining. I don't know.
Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. So, yeah, I think
It's an opportunity.
it's an opportunity.
That's what I would say. I think it's fair.
Yeah. For those online, it really is an opportunity. And not to be prescriptive, but I do think it's always good to take a moment and be strategic to really think about what is it we're doing here as an organization, right? And I think that will, otherwise you might just be burning yourself out. Yeah.
The national priority shifts that will affect our funding need to be considered at this stage. Even if funding has not been decreased yet, it will be. So renewal can happen before a crisis.
Thank you for that comment. That is actually perfect. It's exactly why you want to be looking at it, knowing that you might be in the stage or heading to the stage soon. All right, just some reminders. So just want to say no stage is better than another. So each of them has their own unique strengths and gifts or opportunities, right? Every stage has predictable patterns, needs, and opportunities. And problems here arise from misalignment, not from being a particular stage, right? So it's not because you're in the declining stage that you're having problems. It's just you have a new challenge, right? Not because you're in the stability stage that you are having problems. It's just your challenge for where you're at in that life cycle. And so success here means matching your strategy to where you actually are. So what we have here is just a little bit more of a reflection exercise and get to a turn and talk. So just take 2 or 3 minutes, right? And I think a lot of you have already started thinking, but just stop and think about which life cycle stage best fits where your program is at now. As a reminder, it's launch, stabilization, growth, maturity, or renewal. There's a box that you can check on your worksheet or just write it down. And then, so I'll give you about 2 minutes to stop and think and reflect. And then what we can do is, we'll do a turn and talk. So you can just turn to your neighbor and we're just going to talk about why does the life cycle stage resonate with your program? And then what decisions or priorities does this leg help clarify? Makes sense? Go ahead and take 2 minutes to just do some reflection. And then I'll let you guys know when it's time to talk to number. Okay, okay.
So it's an, it's a, you know, and we're here. Yeah. It's actually. Funding decrease, so it's very. And then, then another target. I don't make any, but in the staff. And that was a unique situation. Embedded inside with that. But. We'll be like a strong. That's the organization, but it's perceived to run the organization. But because the school district basically had to be all this responsibility, as a fiscal agent, but over the years, that's sort of because they start. So this is real. Lies understand about that relationship. You know, and like when something realizes that the school district really has all the power. It's really stabilized organization.
Yeah.
They're gonna like have a big wake up. So all of these things are. And we're not feeling for really.
Right, 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 right.
So we actually. So I'm like, two part-time, two full-time.
Wow.
So it's huge. But I understand, okay, one says, redefining the relationship. Like, saying that, right? Right. Accountable.
Right.
Their responsibility. Which is provide financial assistance for the adults. It's not to run those grants that come. And it's again, strength of the organization. So something that are face these that are. So it's just.
Yeah, yeah.
We are.
I mean, it's a great opportunity. I found it long, yeah.
But at the same time. Here, like. Students.
Yeah.
And this will help, I'm actually, I'm really saying, bring it. And so, why do you?
Yeah.
And so, hey, you're gonna have to play on the table.
Yeah.
Our strategies are not as applied on stage.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think that's a conversation that we talk about.
Yeah.
I think it's about to the- but not my-
Yeah, I think that's right. Somebody else probably yeah. Yeah, sorry, I'm just gonna flip it back on. I don't know what happened here, but yeah, no problem. What's your organization? Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay, where's Stafford?
Stafford is,
Near the top?
it's south.
Okay.
So on the main border,
Yes.
and just a little bit more,
Okay, all right. I've only been to New Hampshire once. I have family up there, and I sadly have only been. Well, they now. My cousin got married. I think I decided I wanted to take the train, and then the last way from Boston to you had a big bus. That's where I had the wrong address, and then I had to take like a super expensive Uber from I think from Stafford to wherever I was going to sit. Yeah.
It doesn't get you everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not big on public transportation, I'm sure.
Yeah.
If you're used to DC, which is great public transportation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're totally.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
Yeah, it was the best. So, I don't know why. I just didn't want to drive.
Train.
It's a lot of things to train.
I'm not train, but
It is. When you get home, or one and a half,
So,
yeah.
This pro bono versus your business. So you have to hire.
If,
You have to hire.
I'm not gonna talk about it.
I was trying to, I don't figure out, what I can afford, because I know, we can't, without investing money.
Now,
Yeah.
And I did hire a, consultant team to sort of help us through this next phase. So they've got, controlled square root inside, working a lot of and, what we asked them to, like, okay, we don't strategy, we don't have money, and actually, we need to put it together. And like, an action plan like the next years, there's money is. So they started work, and I feel good that, she'll be able to get her. So.
Talking about. I'm just in the same with anything. I'm not. Like I need to practice what I preach a little bit. So I know what it's like. So. Maybe about 90 more seconds. Just kind of keep. I hear a lot of good conversation happening. And for those of you that are online, please feel free to just drop any thoughts you have in the chat. All right, everybody. I'm glad to hear a great conversation. Does anybody have a takeaway? One or two people have any takeaways from the turn and chat that you care to share? Yeah, sure.
Could some of these stages just happen on their own? Like, in other words, where he was talking like, he felt that he has this organization, there'd be pieces of any of parts of these stages that he said are relevant now and what he saw it go through. And I feel like that sometimes these stages kind of happen on their own. Like, sometimes growth is just there, right? Or you get to a maturity stage. I feel like not all these steps are deliberate, or they don't have to be. And I didn't know if I was just maybe misunderstanding the model.
Thank you for that question. Yeah, I mean, they do just happen. I would actually probably turn that around. Is you all are professionals, you know what you're doing, right? So you probably have been moving through the stages and doing the right things because the challenge is right there in front of you. And so you've probably been moving through that even without kind of looking at the model. And I think you had another point in there is, yes, you can feel bits of the phases all the time. And especially too, like, if you break it down, like maybe there's your organization as a whole, but maybe if you have multiple programs, one program might be enrolling and another one might just be kind of their maturity. That sometimes you could do the 4x4, like the cash cow, the star, sometimes you might be seeing that within your organization, which is a whole other model that can fit in with this. But yes, you could be having one program in your organization, one functional area maybe is mature, the other one's growing, the other one's leaving. So you could be seeing different parts of your organization in these phases. And then also to your earlier point is you probably are moving through these stages whether you know it or not. Anybody else want to have a comment, thought, question? Okay. Oh, okay. Thank you. Sorry about that. I do want to pause. My wonderful partner here, Holly Ann, did look up the magic numbers. So, do you want to go ahead? Okay.
So the magic numbers is as according to Priya Parker are 6, which is the perfect size for the highest level of intimacy. 12 to 15, which is still a small enough group to have enough trust and intimacy continue to be built. At 30, it kind of starts to feel like a party. And in those situations, you have to be very intentional about the way you facilitate those relationships to maintain that intimacy. And then once you hit that 150 mark, those conceptions of intimacy kind of fall away and it shifts into something else.
Yeah. So if you've been in a growing organization, you may recognize those numbers when your staff or your teams grow. Oh, we did the turn. So just sort of bringing it home a little bit. These are just some tidbits about making sure your strategy matches the stage that you're in. So I'm just going to read it off here. In the launch phase, what you really want to be doing is building credibility. You're testing your model and you're establishing those core relationships that you need. In the stabilization phase, that's where you're documenting processes. You're reducing the dependency on those key people, and then you're developing what is your consistent delivery. Growth, you're investing in infrastructure, managing capacity, and maintaining quality through expansion. Maturity, you're driving innovation, diversifying revenue, you're preventing drift and complacency. And renewal, you're making those intentional choices, redesigning strategy, and exchanging your stakeholders in change.
I just have a question.
Yeah, sure.
So my question is around the reducing key person dependency. I guess anybody can answer. How do you do that in like the realm of our grants? And I know some of you as leaders, and each state's different, but I feel like all the budgeting is forced on me only, and it's kind of done that way and siloed. But even when you look at overall, like our assessment policies, all the grant rules, it's over 500 pages, and like nobody else in my organization even wants to read them. So like, how do you navigate that to even change that?
You got a response to that?
I love it.
What's that?
I'd love to answer.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, and this is taken with a grain of salt. This is one answer from one place, but yeah, I think raising the level of awareness and importance among leadership at the. Are you sitting in a university or a college? Yeah, okay. So I'm in a community college, Central New Mexico Community College in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and over the last several years, we've just continued to raise our name in the meetings that we can raise them in. And at one point, we had a discussion of moving the staff out from under our particular program out to the college. And so we've done that. We've moved our enrollment staff out to enrollment services, and they sit with enrollment services and cross-train their staff, and their staff helps. Yeah, same thing with assessment. Same thing with we have accountants budgeting that help us with the budget piece, and the grant accountants keep track of it. They submit the things, and they totally work for the college. They don't work for us. And so it's just if you can, so kind of like continue to bring that conversation up until people believe in and buy into the mission, and then they're willing to at least we found they're willing to put resources into it. Keep trying.
Thank you. Thank you for this the question and answer. All right, so just the key takeaways here is just remember programs and organizations evolve and your strategy. What worked last year may not work what's needed today. What worked 15 years ago, maybe you've been in one state for 15 years, maybe it's not where you're at today. Life cycle stages normalize challenges. So again, you probably are moving through these stages, whether you know it or not, but identifying it really helps normalize saying this is where we're at. It's signals, it's not failures. Sustainability is alignment, not scale. So bigger doesn't always equal stronger, right? So it's really finding the right fit. And that's also, again, thinking, especially when you're in that growth stage, like, do we need to keep growing or do we need to keep going in this direction? And so, just, again, really, I wasn't excited when I first saw as the 8 o'clock presenter, but then I really was. I think this is a great session. Just use this lens beyond today's session, just as you're going through the rest of your sessions here at COAVE, just really think about it as you're in those sessions, as you're having team conversations, and of course, in your strategic planning when you get there. Kind of just said all this, but this is just a reflection question. I think just how might this life cycle lens shape the questions you ask at your other sessions throughout COAVE? Thoughts? And this is sort of the final slide here is just kind of key takeaway. So this is a tool that you can return to again and again. So, just keep this in your back pocket. Just as you go through, your work, you're always going to be moving through one of these stages. So just think about it when you're having your planning, your conversations, leadership transitions, staff transitions, grant transitions. Just be really thinking about it. And couple just plugs. This is my information here. Here's my email, Brian@EMC Solutions Group. This should get to my contact information. This is my LinkedIn. Please stay in touch. I'm happy to. I like talking about this stuff and geeking out. I also have a fresh box of business cards. I feel like post-pandemic. I love it's like an antiquated thing, right? That I just don't like doing. It's like sending postcards. And then if you have a moment, and I can take a few questions, but before we do, just please be sure to rate the session in the WOVA. It's on the agenda. I believe there's a session rating. So please be sure to do that. They wanted me to ask that. So we got a few minutes. Any final questions or comments? The question is, will I be posting the presentation in the app? Yeah, sure. No, I will be doing that. I just got to make sure that I know how to do it. But I certainly will, and I'll try to reach out to each of you just to make sure that you guys, whether through the app or if I have your emails, I would love to just stay in touch. Any other questions, comments? All right. Well, thank you all for being here today. Enjoy the rest of your conference.